What's up, everybody? Will here with another episode of Restaurant Owners Uncorked, brought to you by us here at Schedulefly. Super simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service at a low price too. We've never raised our prices since 2007. So if you're on pencil and paper or Excel, we can make life a lot easier, solve a lot of scheduling and communication headaches for you. And if you are on another software that has continued to go up in price because they're owned by venture capital or private equity, we can take good care of you. We have our same price we've had since we started the business in 2007, and we would love a chance to earn your business. Schedulefly.com, 30-day free trial. Check it out. All right. So, Jeff, up in Manhattan, the center of the universe. Jeff, introduce yourself if you would.
Hey, everyone, and hi, Will. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jeff Galletly. I am chairman and CEO of Brooklyn Dumpling Shop.
All right, man. So we're just going to have a conversation about hospitality and where you've been, where you are, where you're going, that kind of stuff. So I don't have like a format. I just come in, we just talk, right? But the one question I always ask everybody to kind of kick this off is how and when did you get started in hospitality?
Sure. Great question. And I've done a few things in my career up to this point. Actually started my career in consulting at McKinsey, doing strategy projects for consumer businesses, mostly on the CPG, consumer product side. I really like consumer as an industry, and I like strategy. So I went and joined PepsiCo doing corporate strategy and M&A up here in their headquarters in New York. I was then a brand manager at PepsiCo. And from there, went to business school, got an MBA at Wharton, and decided to totally change careers. I became an investor at a private equity fund. I did a lot of pricing work when I was in private equity as well, for what you just said.
Yeah.
When I was an investor, it became very clear to me that investing's great. You can have a wonderful career. I really felt called to being an operator and going to go lead a business. And I really wanted to get back into the consumer facing space, right? Something that is, what are people buying? Something maybe in the food and beverage space. And that's where I came across, through someone I knew, a business called Restaurant Brands International, RBI. RBI is the global brand owner of Burger King, Popeyes, Tim Hortons. And I decided to get on board there. And so that was my entree into the hospitality space, was joining RBI. I started in Burger King North America marketing, a few different leadership positions there down in Miami. And that's when I got into the space of restaurants and also the business of franchising. And from there, it was a 7-year journey at RBI. It took me all over the world. I became head of North American operations for Burger King. I then moved to Asia and spent 4 years based in Singapore, most of which leading and growing the Tim Hortons Asia business. Tim Hortons, Canadian coffee legends, iconic brand. Took that from 70 to over 700 locations, opening up new markets, and then came back and was GM of the Tim Hortons USA business back in early 2023, and decided that I'd had a great run there. I'd learned a ton. And what I really wanted to go do was go lead a more entrepreneurial growth business, partner with some investors to get into something in its more nascent early stages and take it to its next levels of growth. And that's where I came across an investor named Matt Higgins. Matt runs a fund called RSE Ventures. It's Ross Sports Entertainment Ventures. His partner is Stephen Ross, the founder of Related Companies and owner of the Miami Dolphins. Matt and Stephen, they've been prolific investors in the restaurant space with a number of great brands like Momofuku and Fuku, Magnolia Bakery, Bluestone Lane, and Pizza, Milk Bar. So Matt and I hit it off. And he also wrote a book that was super influential to me called Burn the Boats. And I decided to burn the boats and leave the big corporate life and get on to this much more kind of early stage entrepreneurial journey. Matt has been a shark on Shark Tank with Kevin O'Leary. Kevin has actually sourced this Brooklyn Dumpling Shop business. Kevin called Matt. They've been wanting to do something together. Matt called me, and here we are. So I've been on board here at Brooklyn Dumpling Shop since January of last year. So it's been, call it 13, 14 months now. And we're growing rapidly. We've already doubled in size and we'll actually double in size again in the next 4 months. And so a lot of really great things happening. And, you use the word hospitality, and that's a word that means a lot to me, particularly with our brand where, we are a digitally native brand. We're leveraging technology throughout the restaurant. But something that's so clear to me is that hospitality still matters. And there are certain things you can't outsource. And there's still a level of humanness and human interaction in the restaurants, whether between amongst staff, amongst themselves, staff with guests, that hospitality still matters. And so here we're trying to lean into technology where it makes sense, but also maintain a great guest experience with the spirit of hospitality.
Dude, man, I probably have 50 questions that I just came up with as you were going through this. So what a fascinating journey. And you have done, man, all kinds of stuff. Okay. So first of all, I have to ask this because you did some M&A at Pepsi. They just bought this little soda. I buy these sodas called Poppy, and I think they were on. Ironically, I think they were on Shark Tank at one time,
They
and maybe
were. They were.
I don't think they got the funding or whatever it was, or the Sharks wanted more than they were willing to give up. But they just sold for like 1.6 billion to Pepsi. Um, how, I have to ask this question, like, okay, I don't know how big they are. They're not. I mean, I don't know what their revenue is or whatever, but $1.6 billion. Like, why doesn't Pepsi just go, look, like we're just going to just do the same kind of formula and make our own product and just roll it out there under our brand?
Well, that's pretty much what my job was. I mean, I was junior, but and yeah, I believe they may have gotten funding from like the Guest Shark, and the valuation, my understanding is it's about 4 times forward-looking revenue. So let's say they're doing about 400 million kind of run rate, and Pepsi bought them for 4 times. The fascinating thing about M&A at a place like PepsiCo is that the second PepsiCo buys a brand, the brand instantly becomes more valuable because now it has all the points of distribution that it previously was fighting and struggling to go get. Now it has, its ACV can be 100 because it's in the PepsiCo system. And that, is something that you can't necessarily recreate, and very few companies can recreate. And there is something competitive about the M&A market, whether it's with Coca-Cola or now Keurig Dr. Pepper, which has done a really remarkable job of building its business over the past few decades. And so that was a big part of my job, was evaluating different growth categories and evaluating our portfolio and coming up with the growth algorithm of where is growth going to come from. And you have this incessant decline of the traditional CSD carbonated soft drink business. And there's a balance that leadership there needs to make of investing in supporting what is this incredible cash cow of the carbonated soft drink business, while also being mindful of where the categories are going to be in 1, 3, 5, 10 years to ensure that the business is able to continue growing. So when I was there, we did a lot of work in the energy drink space. We did a lot of work in coconut water. I personally did a lot of work in coconut water and functional beverages, things like protein and what we called like mood enhancing and things like that. And so, yeah, that was a big part of it, was evaluating those opportunities, figuring out what makes sense. And in any of these cases, you're going to pay a premium. It's just a matter of how much of a premium can you ultimately justify and for what reasons, because probably the same group of players is all looking at the same deals. And I think in this case, this is one of the first big moves of, these prebiotic functional sodas. And like, I have no interest in this company whatsoever, but Doc Pop is my favorite soda. Like the Poppy Dr. Pepper version is unbelievable if you
That's
haven't
what I
had it.
drink.
I think it's my favorite soda, period, not just of like the lower cal functional sodas. I think it's fantastic. We actually just launched it in our shops. And so, I think it becomes a little bit of like a, game theory. Okay, we're going to buy this. We're going to pay a premium. What's the value once it gets in our system? Where do we think we can get it? And what happens if we don't buy it and somebody else buys it? And that's part of this whole calculus of whether you're going to go do a deal or not. And so, yeah, fascinating experience, learned a ton, and thinking about, kind of that long-term enduring growth strategy. And so I got to see that side of things. But then I also at PepsiCo was a brand manager where we were driving like that week's sales and coming up with the promotion to improve performance like the next day, the next week, the next month, the next quarter. So I got to see both sides of it, that higher level strategy perspective and the boots on the ground. We got to drive performance right now perspective. And then how that all comes together is what ultimately makes, these companies successful. And it's, it was definitely foundational to my career and how I think about our business here.
I'm a Doc Pop is that's my kid. One of my kids drinks Dr. Pepper, and I'm trying to get him to transition. It's a hard transition though. If you like Dr. I mean, I haven't had soda. Actually, it's funny because I haven't drank soda in years, and I mean like literally years, like maybe a decade or more.
Yep.
And I kind of miss it, but I'm like, I'm not drinking. Like, I just don't want. I know if I drink Dr. Pepper or Coke or Pepsi, I'm going to want it again because it does its thing.
Yep.
So I just stopped drinking it. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me try one of these things. And I feel okay about drinking it. And it's actually pretty freaking good. Like, so my family laughs at me about it. And then the other day I was like, well, they just sold their company for $1.6 billion. So, maybe I'm onto something here. Okay. So you move from there and then you're over here with Tim Horton. So you have been, you're bringing all of this experience and knowledge and seeing things at really large scale. This business where y'all have, if I'm not mistaken, was it like 14 locations now? Is that what I counted when I?
Well, 15 as of last week, will be 16 as of tomorrow, and 18 as of next Friday. So we've got a lot of growth. And, at this pace with our current pipeline, we'll be at least 30 by the end of the year.
Okay.
So a lot of great growth, and this brand, the first location opened in May 2021. When I got on board in January last year, we were 7 locations. And now, we've more than doubled in size. And again, we'll double in size again in the next 4 months.
What's the backstory on the brand?
Yeah. So Brooklyn Dumpling Shop was born out of a business called Brooklyn Shop House. Brooklyn Shop House has 2 very high volume locations here in New York. They are doing kind of a classic steakhouse meets Asian fusion. And they put these really innovative dumpling flavors on the menu, and it took on a life of its own. And so the founders of Brooklyn Shop House said, hey, we got something here. Let's spin this out. And they created a new concept called Brooklyn Dumpling Shop. The initial opening kind of got delayed by COVID and coming out of COVID. Finally, they got it open in May 2021. And so our business is built around our core hero product of our fusion dumplings. And then we add to it kind of higher frequency products like bowls. We have an incredible chicken sandwich, sides, and now boba, talking about beverages and growth beverages. And so, Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, bites, bowls, boba. And we have 3 corporate locations. We'll probably open another 1 or 2 corporate locations. The balance will all be franchised. And so today we have franchise locations in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Dallas. We have a really nice high growth business in Canada. Our Miami location will open in 2 weeks. And we're also doing a lot now with stadiums and licensing. So last Thursday, we opened at Yankee Stadium in a great partnership with the Yankees and Legends Hospitality. And on Wednesday of this week, we're opening at Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. We got a Rangers game Wednesday night. And so, those are great opportunities for us as well. And that's really where the business is today. We also have a consumer product business. So we're selling frozen dumplings in places like Walmart and other regional banners up here in the Northeast. And we're soon launching our roadshow in Costco. Plus, we actually do a lot with Kevin O'Leary on QVC, more direct to consumer DTC business. And so we've got kind of a dynamic, multifaceted business here. But certainly the emphasis for me is ensuring the restaurants are successful. They are the front porch of our business. And of course, that our franchisees are successful and that we're providing them all the tools that we can to help ensure their success.
So how many franchisees? You said you have 2 corporate stores. Do you
Right,
have,
corporate stores, the balance are franchise. And so now we have 7 franchisees. And then up in Canada, we have a master franchisee where they now have sub franchisees.
so do you look as you grow in the franchise space, do you typically look for like, will a franchisee have a handful of locations, or do they buy territories that have 10 or 12, or will you have some that just have 1 or 2, or all the above?
All of the above.
Yeah.
We have, 100+ unit deal for a master franchise in Canada. We have a 30+ unit deal for the entire state of Pennsylvania and South Jersey. We then have some franchisees on 3 or 7 unit deals. And then based on some locations, it's a single unit that made strategic sense, for getting into that particular space. In an ideal world, I look at it 2 ways. One is somebody who's already got a location set up. It's plug and play, and on the kind of matrix of ease of execution, it's like as easy as can be. They already know the franchising space, they already have a location, we can plug in there. This happens a lot in like shopping malls, for example. So great, you got a spot, plug and play, let's go. On the other side, the ideal franchisee for me is somebody who is a franchisee already of legacy brands, and they're having a tough time growing in those brands. The brands are already very penetrated. The territories are all gobbled up. Typically, growing white space in those brands is going to be very difficult. You're going to have to do an F to F, acquiring another franchisee. What I would love to do is take a large territory, take the state of North Carolina, and say, okay, based on our analysis, we believe the state of North Carolina can have 25 Brooklyn Dumpling Shops. And so let's sign a 25 unit deal over 7 years, and you can be effectively the master franchisee for the state of North Carolina, or insert any other state or territory, and go build a scaled business, right? And be unencumbered in your ability to go grow. So that's something that I believe ought to be very attractive to folks who are franchisees of other brands, having a tough time growing for whatever reason. Come on board here, take the territory, and in some cases, you might even be able to become effectively our partner, where you have sub franchisees and we share some of the economics. And so that is also an incentive for folks to take on that larger territory. And it's the combination of being a great operator, knowing operations, knowing your local market, knowing how the real estate works in that market, knowing how to find and access great sites, knowing how to get talent and get folks trained up, coached up, and then executing well for the long haul, combined with being well capitalized. And so you have the ability to go out and grow. Our model, we're typically smaller footprints, 600, 800, 1,000 square feet. It's typically a lower labor model. So we kind of solve for 2 pain points in the franchising space, in terms of being able to access sites, and then on the labor side. But you can be able to go grow unencumbered and go build a really nice business.
Yeah, I might have some folks. I need to connect with you offline. I've got some customers that probably would fit that profile, that are
Love
part
it.
of brands that are looking to,
Let's do it.
good, savvy, multi-unit operators, that, I won't say the brands, but they might have 15 or 20, 30 locations of a brand that they're seeing a lot of the conditions you just discussed. So, um, and then, okay, but outside, like, how do you find those people, and how do you, vet those people, and how do you compete with, I mean, there seem to be so many growing franchises right now that are doing the same thing, like looking for multi-unit operators. And I know there's different categories and all that, and you kind of have a little bit of you're kind of ahead of the curve, I think, with your product set. So, but I'm curious how y'all are finding those franchisees now, and how many, like, out of every 100 you talk to, how many are good candidates realistically?
Sure. So I'm going to be very candid. Actually, coming in, I didn't spend a ton of time on new franchising. I wanted to, in some cases, while we were still growing, also take a bit of a step back and do a lot of really core foundational work, particularly on our menu, brought in some great culinary support, got the menu to a fantastic place, and then help build all the operations around the menu so we can execute a great guest experience every time, that the team members can be efficient and able to execute the menu while also driving things like speed of service. And so building menu and then SOPs, and we're also doing some work on the tech stack. And so actually, in some respects, slowed down some of the growth of new franchising to be able to do that really core foundational work. We're very fortunate in that we had some outstanding franchisees already in the system who were bought in and have been great partners. Now that we've done a lot of that work and performance, and in particular is all up and to the right, and we've got the playbook nailed down, now we're going back out to attract great operators who are savvy, to your point, who understand how things work. It is competitive out there. There are a lot of opportunities for franchising. For us, something that I do believe is unique to us is the where, kind of the where that we're playing. So if you think about the landscape today, we are a fast casual brand, and however you want to define fast casual, we're about a $22, $24 average check. And that's the quality that we're going for, and kind of the space that we're competing in. And if you look at, the darling brands like Chipotle and Sweet Green and Cava, there's no leading Asian inspired fast casual brand. And so we believe that the category has tremendous tailwinds, and that's a great opportunity for folks to be able to go grow with tremendous white space. And so that is something, the category that we're playing in is very attractive with a lot of tailwinds. And then our model and the big company franchisor support that we provide, we've got some incredible folks on our team here. Believe the level of service and support that we provide to our franchisees is quite differentiated for a brand as early as we are. And therefore, we have that ability to go support folks and help them go and grow their businesses. And so a few points of differentiation for us as we're out there scaling this brand.
Let's talk about hospitality, because I mentioned it. You mentioned how important that is. I think it's sometimes missed these days. There's been so much of a move towards operational efficiency and tech and, what you might call digital hospitality. But at the end of the day, we want to feel welcome. We want to feel, like we matter. We want to feel validated. We want to feel like that when we go somewhere, even if it's just the person at the cash register, that they look us in the eyes and smile and that they appreciate us being there. And that's an important part of, that's what hospitality is. It's right. It's just making people feel welcome into your space. So talk about how but that's becoming, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge with the labor force these days. You've got minimal labor, so that's good because you can, you only have so many people you have to train and get dialed in. But it's a tough thing to execute on, or it seems a little more challenging now than maybe it has been in the past. But it's got to happen if a brand is going to sustain itself, I think, over a long time. And those ones you mentioned, like Chipotle and like they're pretty good at that stuff. Not always, but that's a pretty important part of what they do.
Totally. And that's a particularly acute point for this brand. When the brand launched in COVID, we actually deployed a locker system where we called it like bringing back the automat. And so you order 100% digital ordering, either on a self-order kiosk or on your phone. And then there was literally, you'd walk into our restaurants and what you would face is a wall of lockers. And you would get a notification that your order's ready. You scan the QR code and the locker opens and there's your food. And in that process, there might be no human interaction. And if you go back and for whatever reason you want to Google, Brooklyn Dumpling Shop from back in 2021, 2022, a lot of the articles, a lot of the commentary was around zero human interaction. They even I don't know, made an acronym, CHI. And I think that made sense in that point in time when cleanliness and that lack of interaction was actually a feature. As time's gone on and the world's evolved into where we are today, really believe that it's important to strike a balance. And what we've done is in all of our existing restaurants have actually removed columns of lockers, have opened up a proper front counter. We still have 100% digital ordering, but now we've made human interaction, as something that's actually a feature where you can talk to somebody. And what we found is, especially as a new brand, people might have questions, right? They might want to ask about our menu or to have some level of personal service or customization that you're just not getting from, literally having a wall between you and the humans working in the shops. We do have an ambassador role. So this is somebody who is out in the dining room interacting with guests. But based on our labor model, that's not necessarily all the time, right? You can be doing that maybe during peak periods or during the lunch rush or dinner rush, or some of our shops have a huge late night business. So now we can have interaction if you want it. And what we find is some people are perfectly happy to order on their phone, go and scan to the locker and go on their way. And they don't want to talk to anybody. And that's great. And so we can do that. But we've also now made it more accessible and easy to be able to engage with somebody at any point in time during the day to bring back that level of hospitality and service, which it still matters. And I think in some respects, we as a brand probably actually pushed it as far as anybody. And now we've made some adjustments, listening to our guests. We're maniacal about guest feedback. We categorize every single review. And we saw enough early on that suggested, you know what? I think it was well intended what we were doing here with the locker system, but it's also, we're not going to let it be a hindrance to our brand or to our growth. It's not so core to what we are. At the end of the day, we're a food business. We're nourishing people. We're providing them smiles with great, delicious food and hospitality. That's who we are. And we're going to leverage technology where it makes sense to make our team members' lives easier, to make our guests' lives easier, to reduce points of friction. But if it's not accomplishing that, we're not just going to do technology for technology's sake. And that's where we've evolved to where we are today, where particularly in our new builds, we're already building them with a much larger front counter that's open. You can have that interaction. We're still finding a role for the lockers and determining, where that is and where they make sense, particularly for things like mobile order pickups or delivery pickups. But we're also ensuring that we're providing hospitality and that it's a kind of like soulless, humanless experience. And we found that to be really important.
Love it. Love it. Talk about, you go into these different markets. Real estate has been an interesting challenge, it seems like, for a lot of people recently. You have a small footprint. Is that been hard to find for your franchisees? Do they struggle to find the right real estate, or has that not been much of a challenge?
Sure. So for us, we're typically all inline locations. We have largest locations would be like 1,400 square feet. We have, like 200 square foot mall kiosk and kind of everything in between. Our sweet spot is going to be somewhere in that 800, 1,000 square feet, where we can, have our full kitchen, obviously all of the storage space that we need, but also still have a comfortable seating area where folks can dine in. So that's how we approach real estate. For us, foot traffic matters, but we do have a very significant third-party delivery and increasingly a significant catering business. And so that is a big part of where we're playing as well. But even in our existing footprint, we almost have, as far as inline locations go, every type of location. We've got, urban locations in, the densest parts of cities. We've got suburban locations. We've got almost a more rural location up in northern Alberta, Canada. And so we do have an interest. We've got mall locations. We've got stadium locations. So we now have, a variety of different formats. And we're able to see that the brand works in all these different places. And that gives me a great deal of confidence in what we've built here, that we can fit in a lot of different formats. And therefore, real estate becomes less of an issue, combined with the fact that a lot of places, particularly you're talking like suburban strip malls, you're going to deal with non-competes, right? There already is another burger place, sandwich place, coffee place, chicken place, what have you. We're not fighting in that same kind of space. So our ability to access A sites is that much greater. So you combine flexible footprints with the ability to access sites, and it becomes much less of an issue, and we're able to grow unencumbered.
What's how have things changed lately with consumer spending?
This one, I'm sure us and everyone in the industry is actively looking. I'm on, some different group chats and different groups with other folks in the restaurant space, and it seems like a mixed bag out there. Certainly, consumer sentiment has turned, and I think a lot of the reports coming out, particularly recently, with a lot of the volatility in the world, and is indicating that consumer confidence is going negative. So certainly cognizant of that. We're cognizant of all the different deals and promotions that are out there. But we're in this interesting space where we are still in some of an inflationary environment. And so finding that balance of being able to drive profitability, but also being able to attract guests into our restaurants. What we want to do is ensure that we have great everyday value for money, and that's really core to our brand. That you come in and you're getting decent portion size, and we do have different price tiers for different items. But ultimately, we want folks to walk away feeling satisfied and want to return. We want to build loyalty and frequency, and we don't look at it as how do we extract as much as we possibly can from this person on this one visit, but what's the lifetime value of this guest? And how can we ensure that, they're coming back again and again while being mindful of the broader environment and our ability to make money. And so understanding where our costs are and, how we're able to drive profitability, but doing so through incremental visits, not purely, what am I going to get on this one particular check? But I think it is a trying time out there. Any given day, the headlines are going one direction or the next. For us, we want to be consistent, great quality, great hospitality, great value for money, and believe that that's an enduring winning formula, whether, today or a year from now or 5 years from now.
Yeah, that hospitality piece becomes really important for that repeat guest for sure in the experience they have, because they're just tighter with their money right now. There's just no doubt about it. We're spending less because we're just like, what is going on? And we had years of everything going up in price, everything. I mean, gosh, operating your business now is probably a lot more expensive than it was 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think for us, it's certainly mindful of all of our input costs, but not going to sacrifice quality, right? It comes down to quality and taste and ensuring that we have great products that people love and that's what's going to win in the long haul. Like, for example, we're not subject to egg prices, right? Which I was at a restaurant conference a couple of weeks ago, and that seemed to be like the only thing people were talking about was, the cost of eggs. Us, we have your standard commodity inputs, chicken, beef, etc. But we're not seeing so much volatility. We also have independent supply chain. So, for example, our business in Canada, 100% of our food is produced in Canada. Our master franchisee in Canada actually bought their own dumpling plant. They're making all of the products in Alberta. And so, they're relatively isolated with 100% Canadian made products. And so, like, we're mindful of those things and what the impacts might be. But thus far, we've been able to not be so overtly impacted in terms of our costs as of the past couple months. But very mindful of consumer sentiment and the need to provide great value.
Which conference were you at recently where you mentioned that?
RFIS, the Restaurant Franchising Innovation Summit in Myrtle Beach.
Beach, yeah. Okay, I know a bunch of folks that went down to that. Yeah. So egg prices. Do you go to a lot of conferences, Jeff?
Historically, have not been to as many. I will be at RLC in Phoenix in a couple weeks, and then depending on my schedule and everything going on, other things like MUFC and other opportunities to go engage with franchisees or understand what's going on in the space and make sure that we're as well versed in what's going on out there. Um, I think some folks, they go to every conference and they find a lot of value in that. Probably be a bit more selective between myself and some folks on my team, depending on what the topics are and who the audience is. For me, at this point where we are, would love to go, and engage new franchisees or be able to find, places where folks who are interested in looking at new brands are. That's definitely a place where we'll invest some time.
When you go, do you speak or do you just attend? Or
Speak typically. Yeah. And so, we'll have an opportunity to share more about our brand and what we're up to. I've been to last year, maybe 3 or 4, and this year we'll look to do the same. And it is a great opportunity to meet folks, have made some incredible connections, and want to make sure that our brand is visible. At the same time, it's just balancing that with everything else going on, of which there's a lot going on. And so can't go to everything, and need to be judicious in where we're spending our time.
yeah, I mean there is a lot going on. If you're going to have 30 stores by the end of the year, you guys are humming. So are there other CEOs of different franchise brands that you've gotten to know well or that you admire or learn from?
That is a great question. One who's near and dear is actually a board member of our company. Her name is Claudia Lascano. She's the CEO of Fuku, David Chang's chicken sandwich brand. And she's been an incredible partner to me and somebody that I've been able to bounce a lot of ideas off and vice versa. And so, having that, on our board is tremendous. Those kind of other folks, and particularly folks in my past from RBI, who I maintain good relationships with. And then kind of going out to some of these conferences and interacting with other folks and, what are their challenges or biggest pain points, and how are they approaching it is something, I'm always interested in learning. And then, of course, there's maybe some of the legends in the industry, who I've learned from just by reading their books, whether that's, Danny Meyer, Setting the Table, or more recently, Ron Shaich's book, Know What Matters, have found those to be very influential as well.
I know Setting the Table, that book has come up on this podcast more than any other book by like 10 to 1. Oh, for sure. Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality, has been on a lot of people's lists lately. What was the other one you mentioned?
Ron Shaich, the founder of Panera, it's called Know What Matters.
No, what
And so it was about, kind of the core ethos and building the brand of Panera and all that entailed. And actually, I mean, it's interesting, if you follow him like on LinkedIn, he provides commentary of kind of where Panera is today, which is a bit of a different place than it was, in its life cycle, maybe a decade or plus ago. And so I think that, the core of the book of actually knowing what matters and spending time what matters has been really influential to me as a CEO, because there's an infinite number of bright, shiny objects out there that we can go chase. And being disciplined and focusing on what's going to move the needle, where we need it, and not going and chasing every little bright, shiny thing under the sun, has been, to me, extremely important and influential. Because otherwise, you get lost in a sea of opportunity, and losing sight of what's actually going to go, create the best business, build the strongest team, and ultimately, do all the things that we need to do building this company.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to check that out. What is I'll follow him on LinkedIn. Like, what's going on with Panera now versus where it was 10 years ago?
Well, I think, and this is just, me reading public commentary, but, perhaps, they've moved away from some of the things that, made them great. And I think there's even more recently things about like moving away from fresh bread and that type of stuff. And so I'm not going to opine too much on it other than, I think folks can look it up. And again, like he has some open commentary on kind of, where he thinks the state of the brand is, versus, where they were way back when.
Well, I asked that question because I assumed that was probably the case. I mean, you can kind of see it as a consumer, and that's one of the challenges. I mean, you guys are like years away from that, but the it's interesting when you see a brand. I mean, Starbucks has been through it recently. Like they're having to kind of go back to, they were like slapping a sticker on the cup, and now they're going back to that dude came in there and bought however many Sharpies, and they're writing the names on there again. They're trying to get back, brand. There's something about a brand that makes it great. There's something about a brand early, right? Like what y'all are doing now that makes people want to be there, and it's memorable, and you want to return, and then all right, man, I'm gonna get my. So this is where I'm like, then the money guys get in there, PE, whatever, right? And it becomes a spreadsheet, and everything's a spreadsheet, and then you can lose that immeasurable human interaction and things like that. It just seems like such a challenge to grow,
Hmm.
keep the things that are great, and sustain those. I mean, even like I just saw Hooters declare bankruptcy, and like they're bankrupted the business, but you know who's going in and buying they're like half franchise, half corporate. The original franchisees are coming in, they're buying it. They're like, we've lost our way. We lost everything, like, so it's an interesting dynamic where you grow to a point and you start to wonder, will that happen with Chipotle? Will that happen with Cava? Where you get like, you kind of lose what made the brand great
Yeah.
because it doesn't look as good on a spreadsheet, or the margins aren't as good. And we want to, like you said, we want to squeeze every dollar out of that person that comes in here, and then it just turns into this thing where it's like, like,
Not coming back.
yeah, and then somebody has to come in and like, I mean, they hired Tim Schultz back at Star. I always use Starbucks. Like they had to bring him back a couple times. Now they got a guy in it. So it's an interesting topic. I have no, I'm not like judging. I think I would hate to be in the situation where you're like at that point in the brand where you have to kind of like try to refine the magic. But it
Right.
is a thing that you get to some inflection point in a company's history. That's a thing.
And that's part of the job of leadership is the discernment of what makes sense to do and what doesn't. And there are some things that might seem rather obvious, right? Okay, we're currently doing this in each shop. Why don't we make this in a centralized production facility? And that way we have, consistency, and we can drive scale and maybe reduce costs. And you start going down some of these different slopes, and it's like the analogy of the airplane. You veered off a little bit, and after a few weeks or months or years, all of a sudden, where you started and where you are is a very different place. And somewhere along the way, the brand might have lost its soul, the quality might have degraded. And those decisions, and I've been in a lot of these rooms, they make sense at different points in time, and it's defensible, and you can model it out and you can predict it, and it's going to drive top line, it's going to produce savings. I believe in this space, there's an alchemy of quality, value, hospitality that you have to maintain, and you can't just model out or spreadsheet out. And maybe it goes back to what we were just talking about of knowing what matters and saying, actually, no, this is core and fundamental to our brand that we do X, Y, and Z, and we can't veer from that. Now, we can find ways to improve, we can find ways to drive efficiencies, we can find ways to, you know, do whatever, but let's make sure that we're keeping sacred what's sacred. And I think in this space, food quality, safety, and consumer sentiment, people feeling great about what they're eating, and whatever that equation is, sometimes it's not just health and wellness, it's just rather a feeling that folks have of, this is delicious, I love it, it makes me happy, I'm nourished, I want to come back here. That's how brands are built. And then if you maybe lose sight of that, that's how brands start to decline, where, you made one decision, another decision, those decisions start to stack. And all of a sudden, the plane's veered off course, and you've got to do some major course correction. Obviously, you're building a brand. There's what's right in front of us, and there's, where we're going to be down the road. And so trying to be thoughtful about, making those good, healthy, enduring, long-term decisions with the guest and the consumer in mind, balanced with the ability of building a business, managing cash, growing our profitability, which all those things matter, of course, and the metrics matter, but needing to be able to articulate how and why we're going to get there is, I think, a part of the leadership role. And it's not always, cutting corners or, trying to kind of outfox everybody. Sometimes it's just like the basic principles of have great food, great service, and then drive efficiencies in those things and build a great business.
You've been with some pretty big organizations that have massive scale and resources, and now you're part of this, I mean, it's a big opportunity, but a smaller organization. How have you been, like, what's been the most surprising thing to you, Jeff, coming into a situation like this with such a small team and, for lack of a better word, I mean, you just don't have the same resources and reach that you've had on your team.
I've developed that much more of just an incredible appreciation and empathy for entrepreneurship and all the great things that it can do and all the merits that it has, but just the incredible challenges of needing to ruthlessly prioritize and get, the few kind of small but mighty team together, a few folks who are bought into the mission, understand what we're trying to do, can be trusted and own their areas while getting pulled in a lot of different directions and really needing to take care of the team, take care of the business, take care of myself, and all that that entails to ensure that we're out there doing all the right things and that, we sustained enduring growth. And it's just incredible what it takes. It really is the amount of effort and energy and cohesion to have it all come together is remarkable. And I think about other points in my career where maybe my teams were a little bit lean or whatever, but it's like, you have all these auxiliary resources and auxiliary teams that do a whole bunch of the stuff that maybe for myself, in some respects, might have taken for granted a little bit. Now it's like there's nobody out there doing that, right? Unless we set it up that there's going to be someone doing that. And until that happens, it's not getting done. And it's just not going to magically get done. Right. And so setting up the right work streams, putting the right people in the right places, finding the right tools and service providers, vendors who are going to help support this journey and be part of our broader ecosystem. It's limitless, what all that entails and getting that set up into a place of stability upon which we can then continue to grow and stack wins. It's just remarkable all that goes into it. And my appreciation for that now is just that much more.
Burn the boats.
Yeah.
That's a concept that I love, and it
Yeah.
is full on part of entrepreneurship. And you know, did you say is it a book that you read? What was
It is, yeah. What's interesting is I first encountered this concept. I played college football, and my defensive coordinator used to give this a burn the boat speech at least once per year. And so I was familiar with the concept, and he would go through the history of, when they go into battle, they burn their boats because the only way we're getting home is by taking their boats. And so Matt Higgins, he's one of our investors, and so he's written this book. I believe it's a Wall Street Journal, New York Times bestseller. Would encourage everyone to go out and get it. I do the Audible versions, and I had met Matt and listened to the Audible version and then listen to it again and then listen to it again. And ultimately that gave me the courage and confidence to say, you know what? I know what I want to go do. I want to go lead a growth business. I want to go team up with a great group of investors to go do that. And getting myself in that position, there's some boat burning in my own life I had to do. And, I think that it's definitely worthwhile for folks to check out and bring that concept, which it's not blindly or wildly making decisions, still being thoughtful and pragmatic in the decision making, but getting yourself to a place where if you want to do something and it's going to take some guts or gumption to go do that, how do you set yourself up to be able to go do that? And then, when the moment arrives, being able to pull the trigger. And, that's some of the work that I had to do in my own life. And that, the concepts and the book from Matt were influential to me in that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of franchisees that come in that have been maybe in corporate America that have to, burn the boats. I mean, it's a yes, you don't do it blindly and wildly, but it's the thing that it's a concept that you have to you have to take that step at some point where you're like, okay, like I'm going to make this decision and I'm leaning in. And like once we quote burn the boats, like there is no going back. But by doing that, you free yourself to do the things you need to do that you don't have a choice but to figure out now because you did burn the boats. I mean, it's like necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Like once you quote burn the boats, you're gonna, you're kind of putting yourself in a situation where you got to figure it out. And it's an interesting. There's a book called A Million Miles in a Thousand Years I read years ago, and it just talks about like the story you create for yourself. Like you're doing this right now. You're creating your own story in life, right? And it can be, you think about what is the story I want to tell, and then what's the story I want to be able to look back and have told about myself. And a lot of entrepreneurs, like that's a really important thing, is to say like I did this or I did that, and I burned the boats and I went out and I figured this out, and it was really freaking hard, but like really freaking hard, but I also grew and learned and so much from that. And you learn to turn these challenges of limited resources and what you have into like opportunities for growth. And that gets me to something I want to ask you about, Jeff, because you touched on something, which is taking care of your team, taking care of your investors in the business, and taking care of yourself. A lot of times entrepreneurs put everybody else first and they have a hard time finding time to take care of themselves. But it's such an important thing to do for sustainability so that you can continue to do what you do and love what you do and not get burnt out from what you do. So how do you?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And just commenting on what you said before in the burn the boats mold, I think a little bit is like deciding what's the life that you want to live and who you want to be and what's like the what if, right? And my sense is a lot of folks are sitting in a large corporation somewhere and they've reached a level of comfort and safety. And there's this kind of notion of like, well, what if I went and did that? But for whatever reason, they might choose not to, right? And I think some folks, maybe it's you've got a family that's depending on you, you've got whatever reasons. To me, it was like being able to look myself in the eye and know that like I never have to ask myself like, well, what if I did it, right? Because I did. And now, here we are and we're chugging along and it's not been easy. But that's where, now tying it to your other question, there's been so much personal development and growth in this because of the immense challenges and not necessarily having a lot of resources or places to go and having to often go inwards on a lot of things. And through that, developed my own kind of personal development practices and things that have been incredibly helpful to me, or like meditation and mindfulness. I actually really believe there's a huge component of physical fitness and just going to the gym. For me, it's like hot yoga, and I do all these like crazy hot yoga classes. It's tapping into resources. For me, that's coaching and working with a business coach, as well as actually through my investor network, like an organizational psychologist who's very helpful in the framing of different scenarios and ultimately what to go do about it. And so kind of not being alone in a vacuum, but appreciating that there are resources out there. But the onus is on me to tap into those resources and make sure that I'm doing those things. And also, I think just finding the right different communities and places to engage where, what might at times feel lonely doesn't necessarily need to. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, oftentimes looking in the mirror and figuring out what we're going to go do here and why, and does it make sense. And, that's where I think some of these different modalities and practices have been incredibly helpful to me to be able to ensure that I'm protecting the business, protecting our team, doing the right things, and continuing to advance the ball down the field in the right ways through oftentimes a lot of resistance. And I think that's oftentimes what might be overlooked, is like, it's not going to be easy. You're going to face so much resistance in so many places. And I often just think of the very simple saying of like, if it's easy, everyone would do it. Right. If it was so easy, then like literally everyone would go out there and they'd go have whatever business that they would go have. But the ability to be resilient and have fortitude and be able to stomach some of these different challenges, I think that's where the rubber meets the road here, and where I've had to do a lot of those kind of gut check moments and keep forging ahead. and ensuring that I'm also taking care of myself and doing all the right things so that the business, our team, our franchisees, vendors, our ecosystem, our investors, are all well taken care of. But at the end of the day, as a leader of the business, it starts with me.
Do you listen to you read or you listen to audiobooks? Do you also listen to any other podcasts?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I guess more of like the personal development-y kind of podcasts. I do like Andrew Huberman or Modern Wisdom. Chris Williamson are two of my favorites. I definitely get into something like Tim Ferriss. And increasingly, starting to listen to kind of more like entrepreneurship podcasts, business podcasts. I don't necessarily have one I've singled out, but oftentimes find myself kind of coming across individual episodes and listening to other folks who've been through and kind of what they're sharing and figuring out what's relevant, what makes sense, what resonates, what doesn't. And I oftentimes living in New York here, go on long walks along the river with my headphones in, or just kind of listening, digesting, and thinking about our business and my life and how all these things come together.
Huberman's that guy is taking off. I think he's like single-handedly made a dent on the alcohol industry. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of I mean, I know a lot of people who are drinking less or not drinking anymore at all,
yeah.
probably in large part because of him and some of his cohorts. And so, do y'all serve alcohol?
We, in a couple of our shops, like here in New York, in our East Village shop, we have what's called a tavern license. We do beer, wine, and now we just launched sake. And then our Dallas location has beer and wine. But in some places, it's so hard to get a license. But it does, in a nice way, kind of complete a meal. But it's not necessarily been a core focal point of our brand.
So, do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Of course, yeah. And the Jock, I should mention that one, Jocko podcast, and that's actually. If I think about the most influential book in my career, and it's not necessarily a business book, but the book Extreme Ownership, I think really has been influential to formulating how I think about leadership and my role and my life and who I want to be. And so certainly, yeah, the Jocko podcast and the book Extreme Ownership have been very meaningful to my life.
The reason I asked, I figured you may have come across him. I'm not surprised. So, have you ever seen his there's a little YouTube video. It's like 3 minutes long. It's my favorite 3 minutes on YouTube. It's called Good. Are you familiar with that?
I've probably listened to that 100 times.
Me too. Dude,
Yeah,
because you have to, because
yeah,
when I think of what you were talking about is like if it were easy, everybody would do it. It is, I feel like it's one of the most important things you can do, particularly as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or as a parent is, I mean, I've shown that to my kids so many freaking times, man, because I'm like, look, like you, this bad thing happened. It was out of your control. There, you can choose how you respond to that. Like it is a choice. Reality is neutral, and that is a choice. And I think you saying you've watched it 100 times. I talk about in this, like people that listen to this podcast are like, here goes Will with his good thing again. Because I talk about it all the time, but I really do think it's the best 3 minutes on YouTube because and I watch it often. I have it bookmarked because it helps train your brain. Like you want to get to the auto response, like, okay, this bad thing happened. Good. And now because I'm going to immediately start thinking of how am I going to turn that into an opportunity. And if you and your team can start to think that way, and it's not easy and it's not natural because our natural reaction is to get pissed or get scared or whatever it is, but like good, there will actually be something good that will come out of it. And we always, not you, me, like all of us look back. I mean, I don't know anybody who hadn't looked back on like one of the hardest times in their life and said, gosh, that actually wound up being a great blessing. But like when you're in it, it sucks. But then you realize later, like that was good. And something great came out of it. And it was not what we had planned. But
totally.
wow, like did we benefit from it?
Totally. And it makes me think of one of my favorite quotes is Viktor Frankl, The Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
Between stimulus and response, there's a pause. In that pause, there's a choice. And in that choice is freedom. And how we choose to respond and what that response is ultimately going to be what defines us. And that's been in my own personal life. And that's certainly in our business life. And it's fun. It's funny. I think like when I first came in here, I was like, in some respects, I was a little bit like in shock and awe of like entrepreneurial life and just how, in some cases, challenging certain things were. And now, a year plus later, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. Like we just got, kicked in the butt by this, punched in the face by that. But it's like, yep, that's Tuesday. Right. And now, like, we're going to keep on rolling. We know what we're doing. We're very clear and focused on our mission and goals and where we're going. And, we're gonna roll with it, and we're gonna figure it out. Um, some things are harder than others sometimes, but that's absolutely part of the deal. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things about entrepreneurship. It's just how you absorb those things, and then what decision you make coming out of it is going to be, the ability to have like such a disproportionate impact on the trajectory of a business. That's, I think it's one of the greatest, it's almost scary at times, but it's one of the greatest responsibilities that, we're in an inflection point, and it's either going to go like this or it's going to go, horizontal, and we get to choose what's going to happen to the extent that we control it. But if we make good, thoughtful decisions, we work hard, we stick together, and we continue to believe that it's going to come together, it will, and it has. And I couldn't be more excited for where it's going.
Yeah, those are the businesses that endure. I mean, gosh, it's funny. I was just up in Mooresville, North Carolina last week, um, and north of Charlotte, and a place called Brawley Seed Company. My grandfather started it in 1946 with the GI Bill. My uncle took it over. Now my cousins run it. So here we are, literally almost 80 years, 79 years into the life cycle of this business. And you can imagine all of the different challenges they face. And certainly one being that Lowe's, I mean, it's a garden center. So Lowe's literally is headquartered in Mooresville now. And I remember 20 years ago just thinking, this was before I really started to understand and kind of mature as a business person and as an entrepreneur, and understanding that, like, I thought that business, I was like, they're done. Like, there's no way they're going to be able to compete with Lowe's and Home Depot. And, a lot of like, that was when Walmart, like a lot of small business America was like kind of shutting down. And, but you know what they've always done is they've always said, basically, and that without, using Jocko's reference, they've been like, okay, good. Like, we got this problem now. Let's huddle and let's figure this out. Like, we're not going to let this break us. We're going to let this make us better. And, here they are almost 80 years in. Hard to do, easy to conceptualize, hard to do daily. Like you said, that's a Tuesday. And then you got to get up and do it on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, something else happens. But the more you do it, the more you kind of learn that, like, this bad thing that sounds real bad, it's all right. Like, we'll figure this out. We'll get through this. And that mentality opens up the creative pathways, I think, to actually help resolve these things.
Totally. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily make it easier. But I think it's just learning how to roll with it and to stay the course. And but I think it's, that's kind of the part A. The part B is then like, okay, so like, what do we go do next? And having clarity on how we respond. I think that's where having conviction, values, and knowing, and believing where we're going helps on that, that next part of, okay, good. And here's what we're going to go do.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm looking at Discipline Equals Freedom on my bookshelf right there, which is another Jocko book. But I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from like him and some of these guys, ex-military guys. Like the SEALs do three questions after every operation: what went right, what went wrong, and how are we going to adjust going forward to account for both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and that may be I haven't actually read Extreme Ownership. I need to. I have it. I haven't read it yet. Sounds like I need to dial it up. All right. Well, listen, dude, you have spent a lot of your time with me, and I appreciate it and value it. And I've learned a lot from you, and I know our listeners will too. And I just want to thank you. And I also want to congratulate you on the success that you all have had and wish you the best in the success going forward. I hope we can stay in touch. I think you're doing a lot of things really well, and I hope that you find your franchisee or master franchise folks down here in North Carolina soon. I'd love to be able to partake.
Likewise. Will, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do for the industry and for all that you're sharing, and really appreciate the time.
All right, man. Have a good one, Jeff. See you.
Take care.
All right, bye. All right. Thanks, dude.